And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us, and one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight's episode, we're going to be joined by my guest, Kathryn. Kathryn is from Australia. She reached out to me wanting to come on here to talk about some of the things that she's experienced. She believes she's been part of some of these weird secret space program, MK Ultra, remote viewing type of experiences. So I'm definitely looking forward to hearing more about that and diving into the conversation with Kathryn. But before we bring her on, if you've ever had an experience and you would like to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tales, there's a couple things you can do. You can either send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Either way works for me, so just make sure to get a message to me, and we will get something scheduled for a future episode. If you would like to help the podcast out, please continue to share it around. Word of mouth is the best way to help the podcast. Every time you share it, it's a potential new listener out there that could have a new experience they would want to come on and share with the audience. So again, if you've been sharing it, just know I appreciate it. If you would like to help out, you can also leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to podcast at. That helps with the rankings, and it makes the podcast more discoverable for other people. If you would like to help out in other means, there is the Patreon. Make sure to check that out. Follow me on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and X. But I think now we're going to go ahead and dive on into the conversation with Kathryn. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guest tonight, Kathryn. Thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
You're welcome.
Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
I'm from Australia. I'm an older woman. My dad was Army. His father was Army, and I was brought up as a kind of Army brat. He died 10 days before I was born of heart failure or heart attack. And my mum and I went alone. She was a single mum, but she lost her mind and developed mental illnesses like bipolar and Jekyll and Hyde personalities. I lived then, as I live now, not far from the Army barracks where he worked. After the Second World War, where he served as a rat of Tobruk and the Battle of Al Alamein and the withdrawal of Malta, also working for the British Army as well as the Australian Army. He moved to a little suburb near the Army barracks and proceeded to be a truck driver, picking up old ammunition from around Queensland and taking it back to the Army barracks. He spent a lot of time driving into the Central Desert, picking up ammunition from either the Americans or the Australians at different bases that they have out there in the desert. When I was small, my mother was kind of not available because she was so badly grieved by my father dying next to her 10 days before I was born, that she was not functioning. So I kind of grew up like a weed. And occasionally she would try and kill me because she was just overcome with grief. And I believe my father was MK, and I was definitely brought up in an MK type of lifestyle. things like being locked away in rooms and just being isolated a lot. And I was a red-haired, Rh negative, A negative child, as he was. And I think that may have had something to do with their selection of people at the Enoggera Army Barracks in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. They still have their programs running at the Army Barracks. My daughter and I are able to telepathically key into the Army Barracks, and the people that roam around our area, like different soldiers and officers, drive past every day or ride their bikes past every day our house. We have unusual anomalies happening in our area, very unusual vehicles creeping around in the middle of the night, vehicles that I can't even really describe, apart from the fact that they have 4 to 6 wheels. The top of the vehicle is 51% Isle Grey. They are. And I can't even imagine what they're doing. They're so unusual looking. There are other things like individuals who will stand across from our house and just stare in at our house. And we'll go out to the front of our house and look at them like, we know you're staring at us. And but then they'll kind of vanish. You just go inside for whatever it is, and you come back out and you think, how can they possibly have vanished in such a quick time? I mean, I can't see where they would have run, where we wouldn't have seen them. And, you know, different people drive past and, you know, stare. There's constantly people walking past and staring. Like, you can always tell Army because they have kind of black shorts and not army green, khaki t-shirts on. That's their uniform. And they need to train with their heavy backpacks. And there's a big hill where we live, and they go up and down this very steep hill to train for their overseas deployment. But always staring in at our house. Not always, but often staring in at our house on the way past. And we have got used to being observed where we are living now. My daughter, who's quite psychic, she likes to hang out in the backyard. We've got a giant mango tree there because we live in subtropics. She likes to go out at night and just look at the stars. And starts a fire out there, a little campfire. We have a very big backyard. And she was leaning down, like kneeling on the ground, and said, there's tunnels under here in our backyard. There's tunnels all over the place. And she said what they're doing is they are training their remote viewing people along these tunnels. And they're not necessarily, they're psychic tunnels. They're not necessarily physical tunnels. And she said they go along and they are trained to either go left or right when they get to the bottom of this tunnel. But there's a really big one under our backyard. And that's the Army part of our family. I do believe that with my father going into the desert like that, like the like in the Nevada desert, you've got those tall whites. I think we have them in Australia, out in our desert, because we've got this massive desert. And it's extremely, like 50 centigrade above, out in the desert, extremely hot. And that's the type of environment that they like. And it's really cold at night, and they seem to prefer that type of environment. And I do believe that my father may have come across that. And that's kind of a guess. I don't actually know that because he died 10 days before I was born. Not that he would have answered those questions anyway, because none of them were allowed to talk about their experiences when they came back home. They just had to go to the local Returned Soldiers League kind of like hotel, and they'd all talk together in there, but not with their families. No, families didn't know anything they just put up with the night terrors and the nightmares and, stuff like that and the domestic violence without actually knowing why. And that is a feature of Australian life after the Second World War, after the Vietnam War and the Korean War. A lot of domestic violence. Is there a question, or I'm just rambling on here?
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
So you mentioned obviously your father had passed away before you were born. How are you sure that he was involved with the MK projects?
Genetically, I am very strongly like my father. My mother has Sicilian, Scottish, and Indigenous background, and she has jet black hair, icy blue eyes, and I'm nothing like her. I'm like him. Genetic memory, because even I worked over at the army barracks because I wanted to snoop and see what was going on. And they all mistook me as a soldier when I was there by the way, my gait and my behavior, the way I thought. And they'd often mistake me as a soldier and start ordering me around like a soldier until I remind them that I am not a soldier and I don't have to follow any of your rules because I'm an employee. And the epigenetic memories that I have of him are he was a truck driver. He went and took troops to the front and brought back the wounded, as well as information. I spoke with the brigadier of the army barracks when I was working one night, and he was waiting out in the staff tables. And I mentioned about my father and his military record, and mentioned that he was a truck driver, and truck driver comes in inverted commas, like they're usually spooks. And my daughter's ex-boyfriend went from signals to being a truck driver. He said that from now on, you only to call me a truck driver and don't ask me any questions, because, and he went off to train in Canberra at the university there. And he went from being in signals, which is spook territory anyway, into being a genuine spook, and they are only known as truck drivers.
Okay.
Oh, that didn't answer the MK question. It's just epigenetic memory, and the fact that I was kind of tortured as a child.
Now, for anyone listening, like, I know what MK Ultra is, but like, how would you explain that to someone that's not familiar with it?
It is a Second World War experimental program. An individual enough to be able to split their mind into different personalities, seal off those personalities, and use those personalities for whatever agenda they have. So there's different programs that I use. Like there's the Stargate program, which is about being a telepath, I believe. And there's the Super Soldier program where you go off to Mars and fight, or any other planet around in the solar system. I have strong memories of that. I have strong memories of the telepath program, the Super Soldier program, and the MyLab and hybrid programs. Those are the ones that I remember being cloned out to. And the only reason I say it was either a 20 and back thing or they're clones. And I felt strongly that they're clones.
Now, when you have these memories or anything like that, how do you... I've interviewed several different people. I've actually the recent episode just came out yesterday was with a secret space program. My biggest question when it comes to stuff like that is like they claim they do these memory wipes, but then how do these people remember if they've had their memory wiped? And that's where I get confused on the whole aspect of it.
Yeah. There are bleed throughs. I have a bleed through with a couple of telepathy projects and remote viewing projects, and a bleed through with the hybrid program and bleed through with the super soldier programs, mainly in that during the nighttime sojourns when when we're supposed to be sleeping, there are these kind of hyper-real situations and dreams that are more than a dream. They're not illogically unfloating like a dream. They are fully realized moments. And when you wake up or come to after having these experiences, you think that was no dream. That was a real situation because it's so visceral. But like anybody talking about any of these situations, there's absolutely nothing that can be proven. It's just all a person's subjective reality.
I've always tried to wonder if when you guys are experiencing these events or whatever, if it is actually something that I wonder if they're like false memories that they've been implanted into you. Does that make sense? Like if they were doing
Yeah,
like these things to you, and because for the most part, like when I interview people, and I don't try and like not to sound like a dick or anything about it, but like everyone always seems like they did something amazing when they did these things. Like they've always done something, they changed the outcome of this, they've done. You don't ever hear about
no,
you don't ever hear about someone just being sent out there and they had to build stuff. All they did was they built stuff. Or you don't hear someone out there that cleaned toilets. You know what I mean? Like they were sent out to
yeah,
do fantastical things, and it's almost like, why is it everyone that you hear about always had these experiences where they've had to save the universe or they've done something fantastical or they've went here, they were an assassin or whatever. Like there's always these different aspects of it, but you never hear about the fact that someone was out there like, well, I had to clean all the crap out of the back of the ships we were on or whatever. Like they were just grunt work. You don't hear about that. So I
yeah.
wonder if they're like memories are being placed within them to cover up all the experiments that was actually being done to them here.
I wonder at some of those grandiose personalities myself. I don't have personally a grandiose personality in my day-to-day life. I actually terrible self-esteem, and even though I have this need to be heard because of these unusual experiences. You can talk to about this, like you can't go to your auntie or your uncle and say, "Oh, by the way," it's really sifting through the enormous amount of crap on social media to find anyone who knows anything about anything. And I've been looking for a long time. I was friends with Max Spears for a while before he died, part of his face group little thing we had every night. And he explained he was able to explain. He was searching himself to find out what happened to him. I was searching myself to find out what happened to me. Not everybody has a grandiose personality. And yeah, there are screen memories. Some of my screen memories kind of are a little bit obvious because they are, sort of important, like you would be an important person, not covered in guts on a battlefield on some other place, or doing things that I would never even conceive of doing in my normal life. I once on I think it might have been Mars. I actually can't tell you for real because I don't remember where exactly. Anyway, I was running out of this tunnel full pelt, and I was being chased and very closely chased. And I came out of the tunnel and ran down this little slope. and immediately made like a rock. I curled up into a ball with my back to the road and became kind of invisible. And I remember waking thinking, where on earth would that come from? I don't ever remember thinking about becoming a rock. It was just so unusual. And when I finally lost that Mars clone, I think it's Mars, I can't tell for certain, I was shot in the head, like from the top way down to my collarbone, and there was no blood, there was no guts anywhere. It was just a smooth, like a laser cut thing, and my head splayed either side, and I never had contact with that particular clone or 20 and back or whatever. I don't know what it is. I've never been regressed. These are just memories of my own. And I didn't ever have any recollections of that soldier again. And it was a male soldier. And I still am confused about the male-female thing. I look very female, but I behave like a man. Yeah.
I get confused on the whole aspect of the 20 and back in general, of how they're able to take someone's consciousness, move them to a clone, then send them back through time. Like,
yeah.
To me, that is the most head scratching part of the whole thing in general to me, is if they have the ability to control time,
Yes.
why couldn't they just go to the future where they have even more stuff in the future and bring it back here, and then they don't need to take people because they've already been able to do it in the future? So if you can travel through time, why they got to continue to take people now when it's already been done in the future? Like, to me, it almost makes a paradox. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. It is confusing. I don't know the answer to that myself, apart from the fact that they get a perverse pleasure out of playing with us. You know, that it's just like a silly board game to my way of thinking. And they are interdimensional time, go to places where time and space don't exist. And they just play around. I don't know why. And I don't know whether, I've just heard other people talking about 20 and back, but I don't ever remember sitting in a chair or, the jump chairs they talk about. I don't remember any of that. But that is a lot in America, not in Australia. And Australia has its own story, and America has its own story. And of course, Europe. I honestly don't know. There is a person called Fiona Barnett in Australia, and she's called the Candy Girl. And she just exposes the entire thing. And she's in hiding right now. But she did a lot of damage when she came out and told her story. Very, very interesting. I don't have an answer to that. I just don't know. There's so much I just don't know. I have these experiences that I can't explain either. I just don't know. The hybrid one, I was in a dumb base, and I remember walking. I was pregnant, 7 months pregnant, and I was walking along this kind of hallway, and it was all dank and sort of grey and kind of wet even. And these two men in like laboratory or doctors or something were walking me along to this birthing room, operating room. And they said to me, don't worry, this time there will be doctors there. And I had in my body some sort of hybrid being, human something hybrid. And off to my left, we were walking past these giant sort of fish tanks, and there were two creatures in there that were part aquatic and human, and I thought they were dead. Like the tanks weren't lit, and they looked really miserable. They just looked miserable. But one of the creatures twitched And I thought to myself, oh my God, they're still alive. And there was another one at the back. And I felt or believed at the time they just kept them there for observation, for their own amusement. So I can only guess with the jumping backwards and forwards in time that they do things for their own amusement. Not all otherworld people are like that, but there's definitely a certain number of people that are they're just perverts. They just want to play around with us.
Do you believe that the ones that are doing this now are actually us, or are they something else that are causing all this? Like, I mean, does it the ones controlling it these days, is it still humans, or do you think they're being outside influenced by some other sort of entities?
I don't believe they are from this planet. Although I can't say for certain. I did a remote viewing things when I went into the tunnels under that Central American facility that is in Australia. And I went down into these tunnels because I thought to myself, I'm going to go down there and have a look and see for myself what's going on. And there was this individual, kind of like a goanna or a lizard. And it's had a very high methane or something content, or ammonia sort of content in these tunnels, because they don't come up to the surface very often. And it looked at me and said, oh, tasty. And I shot out of there quickly. I thought, oh, that's what's down there. Well, I'm going to leave it down there. I don't know what it is. And the fact that it could see me, I mean, they could be coming from this planet. But personally, I think if this planet has been saved as a kind of a seed bank and a place where other people who have ruined their own planets, or who refugees of some place or another, they come here to settle after their own place has been taken over. I think that it's been taken over by a species that just has bred us and wanted to use us as slaves and food and blood and, whatever they're into. And I believe where it was a beautiful place once, for now they'd rather blow it all to hell than give it back. That was a bit waffly for your question. So it could be.
So there's not really a definitive answer for some of the questions I ask. It's more or less just like rhetorical questions that I kind of think of. But like,
okay.
No, like for me, I feel like if humans in general are, there's no other way to say it other than we're kind of shitbags every once in a while. Like there's a lot of bad people out there. So I wouldn't put it past human nature to do this to each other, because look how we treat everyone anyways. But
yeah,
at the same time, it's also kind of like, I feel like there's an outside influence one way or the other. And if this is really going on and this type of stuff's going on, I don't think it's anything from here originally. Like people talk about these reptiles, like reptilians or whatever. Throughout ancient texts, there's been references, even like if you go, not to throw a biblical aspect to it, but like even in the Bible, like in Genesis or whatever, when Eve ate the apple, it was a reptile that gave the apple, and the punishment was God made them crawl on their bellies. So that means at one point they were able to walk on legs. If you start to look at all these random references, it's like, are they referring to like reptilian people? So that if you go back through history and you have your dinosaurs, if you believe in evolution, like millions of years ago, What if some of these things still kept evolving and they turned into, after millions of years, they became these creatures that people call reptilians? Maybe they're just an advanced species of reptiles that were evolved from 300 million years ago from dinosaurs. Who knows? I know they claim there's ancient civilizations and maybe
This
some of
is
these things are
negative
from that.
blood. I don't have monkeys in my blood.
No, I don't. I don't necessarily believe in evolution in the sense of we evolved from monkeys because or apes or whatever. I'm not saying we aren't somehow closely related, but if we evolve, why isn't there other evolutionary strands that evolved too? Like, why are we the only ones that managed to become what we became? But I'm not,
Because we were bred that way.
yeah, I was I'm not a scientist or anything, but I feel like with evolution, there's some flaws to it.
Mm. I don't go along with traditional evolution. It doesn't make any sense to me. There is a wonderful paleontologist. I'll get his name while I'm looking at you. And he's interviewed by Ross Coulthard, the man that interviewed David Grush. And he's an evolutionary kind of paleontologist, and he goes into how it's highly unlikely that we would have naturally evolved into what we are today, along a traditional timeline, and that we mostly have been genetically altered in the Zacharias-Sitchin type of way, where these seeders have come in and mucked around with our DNA for specific purposes. Like, I don't know, people for mining, people for, whatever they wanted. I'm not explaining that very well either. I just don't have an answer for some of your things. The other reason as to why I think there is outside influences from other areas is I was remote viewing accidentally at the American-owned structure in the middle of Australia, and I can't mention that because we get punished so badly for saying that. And there were these individuals way down the bottom, and probably one of the deepest levels of that place. And it was a small room, and there was a round table in the middle with a glass structure in a semi-dome, like a half dome shape. And there were 4 of these tall individuals in there, and they were moving things around in this glass structure and walking around the table. I couldn't actually see, but it looked like landscapes in the glass structure, and they were actually moving things around in there, and I don't really know what it was. But one of them saw me, and I was floating in the rock outside this room, and it came over, and it was really angry that I had seen them. And I said, piss off. And then I ended up back in my bed. I'd been slammed down on the bed, and I still got shoulder and neck injuries from it. And they shoved stuff up my right nostril with their filthy instruments. It became all infected and everything. But they really threw me around a bit, and my shoulder wasn't exactly out of its socket, but it clicks even now where this is my right shoulder that this happened. And even now, if I talk about that, and I'm trying not to say any names, but then they'll come and mess me up. So they don't want anyone to know that they're here. And I don't believe that they are from here. But they're tall and they're grey. But they're a specific type that are quite nasty. And they're in control of Australia, and our entire continent is taken over by these individuals. And Cassidy came out here and said she thought the place was a giant alien base, And I believe her. I believe that to be true.
Completely off topic, but you mentioned like the whole area of being in gray base, and I do a lot of weird stuff on this show. Obviously, the tinfoil thing, so I don't do a lot of conspiracies. There's people that don't even believe Australia is real.
I know.
I'm not one of
Yeah,
those
here we
people, but
are.
I'm not one of those people, but I've had people argue with me before that Australia is not even a real place. Like you can't get, it doesn't exist. It's made up. I was like, I've talked with people from Australia. Like, have you been there? Do you know this? I was like, all right, I'm not going to argue about the existence of Australia. It's kind of dumb in my opinion, but
Well, I've driven around most of it, and I can tell you I'm here. Yeah.
So yeah, I've talked to a few people from Australia, and unless you guys are all just AI bots and just try to confuse me and push that narrative that Australia is real,
No,
I'm not buying into that one. But
no, that's an unusual way of thinking.
yeah, there's other people that think birds are fake too, which I'm not going to say that there's not drones flying around that are impersonating birds, but I have chickens out back that lay eggs and I eat the eggs. I've raised them since they've been big. So I was like, I'm pretty sure these birds are real, but okay.
Yeah, yeah. They look at the birds that visit my house look real. Yes. I can't say they're all, I did have an experience. I'm waffling on in my experiences here. Anyway, I'd done something wrong on the internet. Said something I shouldn't have for something. I get my computers disabled, hard drives burnt out, whole pages disappear, things like that. And there was this enormously loud sound in the middle of the night, and it sounded like a skip bin being dragged along the cement driveway outside. And it was so loud that I thought everybody might be able to hear it. And then it just stopped. But my neighbor has cameras, and she said that all she saw was a drone hovering over my house. She didn't see any loud noises. She didn't hear anything on her cameras. There was just a drone. And that's one of the things that happened in this house that I live in. Also, when I first moved in there, Miles Johnson talks about scuttlers. They are these military spiders shaped interdimensional robot things. They have no abdomen. They don't need to eat, but they have the 8 legs. And I had them very badly in the house when I first moved in there. And they would go crawl up the wall, and they were about, I don't know, 30 centimeters to, let's say, that's 12 inches to 18 inches in diameter. And this like otherworldly vortex type black. And they would scuttle up the walls and climb into these portals. But there were different types of ones. They weren't all the same model, I thought. And I did come across Miles Johnson talking about these scuttlers, and that they are military interdimensional robots that will come up and muck up your electronical devices, your communication devices, phones, laptops, and things like that. And for me personally, I'm just like this lady, this random lady who mucks around, trying to investigate this and investigate that. I'm a big fat nobody as far as I'm concerned. But yet I have these things happen to me. And with the scuttlers, I was thinking, what on earth could they possibly want that, whatever I'm doing is not even that important. I'm just mucking around, trying to find out, the truth of things. And the same goes with the super soldier thing, the remote viewing, and any of the other experiences that I've had. And one thing that I've come across is that they don't have what we have, and they're insanely jealous of it. They don't have the ability to co-create with God, and they don't have a heart chakra like we have. And the heart chakra and the whole vibration of love is the creator. Like, you can create solar systems and beings, like from what I've heard from these great cosmic beings that, shape, form, and matter into new beings, like they're kind of giving birth. But we all have the potential to do that, and they don't. So they will pick at us and just torture us, basically, because they're just so jealous. And I'm a free range human being. I don't have any jabs or whatever they're called, inoculations of any kind. I'm just a natural human being. And that's the only reason I can think of that they would even bother. I got no other explanation.
I feel like you mentioned the inoculation or whatever. Around here, a lot of my children, it's required in our areas for children to actually go to school. They all have to have their stuff. I don't want to say the words because it'll get me flagged. But
sorry about that.
No, that's fine. But yeah, there's certain things you have to do, and if you don't do it, well, your kids can't go to the school, or like, it's kind of a strange thing, but it is what it is. And I don't know how that plays into other aspects, but sometimes I've wondered, like, what are they actually doing with it? Like, what are they actually putting in everyone? And it kind of makes it, like, again, it's more a rhetorical question, but it's like, that's just kind of what I think about things. And I wonder, like what you said, I wonder if that has some sort of an impact on people, the ones that don't have it, if that's the reason they look for people similar. Because I've noticed there is a little bit of a correlation with some people that have never had anything like that, and they have these experiences.
From what I gather, they want to put things into our system that change our DNA, and therefore they will make it so that they can copyright it. Whereas a free range human being, you can't copyright nature, but you can copyright someone whose DNA has been changed and they now have a number. And personally, that's what I thought was going on with that massive push to do that. And a lot of people homeschool. I have 5 boys and 1 girl. There is just no chance I was ever going to homeschool. I would have gone insane. They are very testosterone boys. They would have torn me to shreds. I had to, but luckily, it was before all of this business. And it started with the youngest ones, where they had to have a card to say that they'd had certain things done to them. But I was able to get away with the older ones not needing that. So they were able to go to school, and homeschooling was out of the question. I admire people who do it. Way too much for me. Yeah, that's what I thought about that. That they are able to give us a number and own us.
I was actually homeschooled up until 8th grade, but
Oof.
I only had a younger brother, and by the time I went to school, he was just starting his school. So I'm 8 years older than him, so it wasn't as chaotic. But I've got 4 of my own kids, and 3 of them are in school, so it's kind of, there's no way. I couldn't do it. I don't think my wife could handle it. Like, there's no way.
No. God,
but
no.
I
You
had
have to have some discipline. Ooh.
Before we get ready to wrap this one up, there's a couple things I wanted to talk about. You mentioned remote viewing or whatever. How do you do, like, how how's it possible? Like, what do you do to prepare to do a remote viewing? Like, what do you have to go through in order to do it?
I can't do it uh, consciously. The only way I do it is accidentally, which I presume I haven't had any regressions, and even regressions are subjective. You know what I mean? They may be, they may not be. Like they're not 100% certain about anything. So the only reason is because I have bleed through, and when I have a bleed through, and I mean by that where I was used for a certain thing. And I actually remembered part of it. And when I became conscious again, and I can't do it any other way, but there has to be. I remember being yanked out of having my soul yanked out of my body, and people come, because when they do that, they actually throw you down on your body, on your bed, and it releases your chakras and your soul, and they yank it and take it away somewhere and put it in something else to do whatever they want, whatever they want. So I'm presuming that that type of thing has happened. There's so many unusual experiences that I have no context for. And I am part of the Super Soldier group with Misha Johnson, and it's so helpful and able to clarify and make sense of a lot of experiences that I've had through being a member of her group. Have been for a while now, not years or anything, months. But I'm just at the beginning of being able to understand the things that I've gone through, and they're still all a little bit confusing. And as time goes on, I'll make sense of it more. I miss Max Spears, I've got to tell you. He really sorted things out for us all that were part of his Facebook group. But that ended terribly. And then I found Misha after that. And that was really good. So I don't know about the remote viewing. It's accidental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something I've always been curious about too, is they claim that there's people that have these abilities where they can remote view. They can actually see through things. They practiced it back in one of the alphabet agencies. I won't say that one either because it brings up certain things. But you bring up these agencies and the experiments and everything that they supposedly had done. Remote viewing was like one of those big things that they were all about. And I think that's how the whole EK thing came about too, is they were trying to tap into these children with these abilities to see, spy on their enemies or so-called enemies or whatever it was that they were doing. So I didn't know.
Exactly. That's why I ended up down the bottom of that golf ball city in the middle of Australia, spying. Yeah. Not what I prefer to do. I'd just rather be a normal human being mother, just getting about my day, but that's just not my life. So it just didn't happen like that.
Do you still have experiences like as of today? Like, when was the last time you've had any type of weird experience or memory?
Yeah. I woke in the middle of the night 2 nights ago, and there was this flash of light over near my neck, between my neck and the pillow. And then I saw this Nord face right in front of my face with these big, long, bright white eyelashes. Gee, it was pretty. And white hair. And it was just so lovely. Also, I've been in contact with recently some blue beings, and they're the loveliest people. And they have these eyes that have like a cosmos in them, but not just a cosmos. It's like a cosmos where you can go back forever into the foreverness of space. And they just got these big, incredible eyes. I think the first one I saw was a child because it was small, and it called me a sister. And then the second time was a much, much taller person, like an adult. And it was kind of instructing me. And there was another one where I was over the top. I had this experience where I was in this waiting room and I was waiting to be interviewed. And this grey individual came out the door and it said, Kathryn Farrell. And I went in to be interviewed by, I don't know what, because I cut out then. But then I was floating over the top of this mantid being, and I could see its mandibles out the front of it because I was over the top of its head. And it was instructing me. We were in this cave, and I wasn't part of the being, but I was floating over it. And it was showing me how it was communicating and how different names that it has for different things. And I presumed that it was part of the interview process that I was going through. So there seems to be more and more. It seems to have intensified with different beings. Just in the last couple of months, there's like 3 or 4 different beings that I've come in contact with. And it's pretty fascinating because the mantid, for instance, was such a lovely person. They were really I was very aware that it could just like eat me at any minute. Like we didn't want to go there. But it was very, very nice and instructing me about its life.
Did any of these things ever communicate with you in the sense of, is it all like telepathy or do they actually speak? How do they communicate?
Telepathy. But then I see them as well. And I've always been like that since I was a child, which is why I think it's another MK thing because of my psychic abilities. And both. I will ask a question, there will be an answer, but it's always from the left-hand side of my body. And if it's from another part of my body, like the back of the right-hand side, I don't take any notice at all because I don't want to know about it because it's not right. You know what I mean? It's something that's trying to influence me in one way or another, and I'm not interested. But if this friendly feeling and vision type thing comes from the left-hand side of my body, then I'll take notice. When a being is good, has altruistic motives and is not service to self, mainly because of the way they talk and the way they instruct. It's always very loving.
Mm-hmm.
They told me I looked at too much YouTube. It pointed at my screen and said, too much of this. And I'm like, oh, I know, but I like it. And so I was kind of disobedient in a way.
What is the one thing that stood out to you the most when, like, going through all this? Like, what is the one thing that you've kind of gotten from it? Like, what do you think the end game of this could be?
I think if we can get rid of these parasites off our planet and get rid of, I think it was David Icke that said recently, you've got this that's going on here, but tackle that. And as the good people, light bearers on this planet, excuse me, if we can get together and love enough and just push them away with our hands. We've got chakras in our palms, and we can connect those to our heart and our third eye and our throat and different chakras. And if we line up these chakras and actually, use the palms in our hands, we can actually push these individuals off the planet. And if every light bearer on this planet were to leave right now, the place would implode. It's very, very important for people to be free range and natural and loving and kind and look after one another and support one another. And I think if we can manage to get rid of these beings, we've got a wonderfully bright future ahead of us with some lovely, really lovely individuals that come from other systems of worlds that are just waiting for us to get our act together. Not get our act together sounds really aggressive, but get together and love these beings off the planet so that they can't stand being there. It's like an itch and it drives them crazy and they have to leave.
I've always thought of it in the sense of if there's the higher intelligence out there, why would they even want to come here to talk with us when we can't even get along with our own species? How are we supposed to get along with a more advanced
I think
species?
there are different warring factions here. For instance, I had heard, like in the 80s, I've been doing this a long time, that the individuals from the exploded Meldic, the best of that was available went to the Middle East, and they continue their warring ways even today. No one can figure out the intergenerational trauma they're talking about because it goes back so long. And Mars, for instance, there's I believe have been told there are freedom fighters still on Mars, native Martians, but there was a group of refugees that came and settled in Japan. So the indigenous Japanese were pretty much chased to the top island, and they still reside up there, but the Japanese that are there now are actually from Mars. And there are other groups that have landed on the planet, and they aren't from native to this planet. So the planet has a whole lot of intelligent life that come from other systems of worlds, and it's like a big a Garden of Eden, really. And it has been known as that. This is just my own thoughts. It has been known as that for a very long time, and these individuals have a vested interest in this kind of seed bank, like a big Svalbard seed bank, except it's an entire planet. And that's their interest in it. And, with the altered human beings that were made for mining, it's very interesting. And plus there are other dimensions that have come here as well, like Santa Kamara coming with his group of people who settled in the Gobi Desert and, tried to save the planet because it had gone down such a rabbit hole of darkness. And the people that came with him got lost because they didn't understand what sort of darkness they were facing. I think there's a lot of beings that are interested in this planet for a lot of different reasons.
Let's say with Earth, if we're not as special as it makes it out to be, like if there's all these other races and the whole universe has different planets and everything else, it always seems kind of strange that they took such a liking to here on Earth. So I wonder how actual rare places like this actually is out throughout the cosmos.
I don't think it is rare. I think there's seed banks or gardens of Edens all over the place. To my way of thinking, I don't think it's rare. I think it's just a, kind of like a fishbowl, and you put little guppies in it, and you don't want to see the little guppies die. I know that sounds very trite, but it's an interesting simile. No, I don't think it's rare.
It almost seems like, with that analogy, basically, where a fishbowl, an ant farmer, or whatever, it's basically we're all put here, this melting pot, and then every once in a while they try and check in on us, but then you hear the versions of we're only here because they keep us in the dark because there's other, like you mentioned, parasites. They claim there's other ones that are out here feeding off of us, like the negativity, the low vibrations, all this other things. Like we're only here and kept in the dark to be their food source. And to me, that's kind of screwed up too.
Yeah, I did see though. I was just had this realization that movie theaters and, sports stadiums and places like that, where people release a whole lot of energy. It's either adrenals or fear or something like that for movie theaters. And I saw these interdimensional individuals going along and feeding off all the energy that's artificially produced in these places. I wouldn't go to one. I don't go to those places. So there is that aspect. There is that they are here doing that, but it's not the only thing that's going on. It's not as bad as everybody is making out. I mean, it's pretty bad now. It's nuts with our political leaders. I just don't even know what that means. It's bizarre. And we got the same things here, like nuts. And I think that if we believe, I know, because we create, and if we believe and use our chakras and our words, we can actually save the place and have it back to the beautiful place, that it was once before it got, destroyed by these, grasshoppers that come in and tear the place apart for mining or whatever. There's no need for it. We have the technology. We don't need it.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything else you'd like to discuss, we can, or if you're good, we can probably wrap this one up.
I could waffle on for a very long time, but I think we could wrap it up.
As I always just want to make sure that if there's anything specific you wanted to talk about, I've still got time. We can talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, but if you're good, we've been going on for about an hour, so.
Okay. Interdimensional, otherworldly places. I do believe that Sonic Kamara came here, settled in the Gobi Desert, and there was an etheric city there, or fourth or fifth dimension city, and he withdrew it because the place was, people were, I think it was around about, it was thousands of years ago. Atlantis could have been around about the same time, I'm not sure. But Atlantis was full of cannibalism and bestiality and crazy experiments with animals and humans. And I mean, the place had lost its mind. And it was just too dark. And he wrapped up and took it away. And there was Saint Germain, I believe, in one incarnation. So I heard through the teachings of the I Am movement and Bridge to Freedom, and there's other the I Am movement, Godfrey Ray King. I've listened to a lot of that type of thing. And there's Phylos, the Tibetan, talking about Atlantis. And there's a lot of literature out there that people can read to catch up on, what these people think happened. And one of Saint Germain's embodiments was in the Sahara Desert. And it was when it was a tropical wonderland. But it was a similar situation like the Gobi Desert place. There was this beautiful etheric city. People used their chakras and energy to create. And it was on a completely different level to, what we do on this planet in this reality today. But I think the people also became perverted. There's just something about this planet that drags people down to hell. And that also had to be taken away. Then, it was desert. But I think the Sphinx or something like that was part of that civilization, or I don't know. I've got a lot more study to do myself. And that's probably all I want to say, that there's a lot of literature out there that people can read and catch up on. A lot is on YouTube, which I watch too much YouTube. So I think that will do. Thank you very much, Brandon.
No, thank you. For anyone out there listening, again, I want to say thanks to Kathryn for coming on here tonight. It's been a pleasure. And again, if you ever want to talk about more stuff, just reach out to me. But
Okay.
I think we can wrap this one up now. So again, thanks for listening, and thanks for Kathryn for coming on here and talking with me tonight. You have a good one.
Thank you.
Yep. Good night.
Good night.
And that's the show, everyone. I really hope you guys enjoyed the conversations. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to the contact section of tinfoiltales.com. Just get your message to me. We'll get something scheduled for a future episode. And just remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.
Tinfoil Tales in the headphones. Yeah, it's time to rock. Got a story about a cryptic creature. Let's take a walk. Bigfoot, dogman, they're out there in the dark. But the truth is out there like an alien spark. UFO sightings got the whole world shook. Conspiracies unfold like a story in a book. Media control, trying to keep us blind. Oh, before gonna use my own mind. In history, they don't want us to know the secrets they're hiding, the truth they won't show. Dominate our society, they keep us in chains. But I'm standing tall, it's time to break the reins. Control, trying to keep us blind. But I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history, they don't want us to know